hey, it's been a while. I did want to start this with me saying, this is not me saying, oh, I'm back to Rocket League. Unfortunately, I just don't think it's going to happen. That being said, recently I did take part in a video with Lethamir. Because of that, Rocket League popped up again on my For You page or on my YouTube homepage. With that, I saw this video. And I haven't been keeping up with Rocket League at all since I left the game. Basically, this is my first ever, I think, reaction video. And it was just me catching up on what's been going on. Because apparently, Rocket League esports is not doing too well. Also, just because I feel like I haven't uploaded in a very long time. And I am kind of missing it. Don't know what to upload though. I've been playing a bit of Pokemon. So maybe some challenge videos on that. Maybe just some challenge videos on different games I enjoy playing. But we'll see. Without wasting any more of your time, I will jump into the video. My first ever reaction video. This is probably fun. Okay.
Rocket League esports is facing its biggest crisis ever.
What's been happening?
The orgs are begging the developer to do something about it. The 2024 World Champions won't field a roster to start next season. Longtime supporters of the game are forced to bail, even as they say they want to somehow make this work.
First off, does anyone know what was it 600,000 the prize pool for Worlds? I think it was 600K. Man.
They're cautiously holding out for some kind of change that will make this all worth it.
Monkey Moon's
Over the
so
past
jacked.
few months, we've seen orgs speak more candidly than ever about the problems facing Rocket League esports.
Okay.
But is it already too late?
It's like a learning session for me. Rizzo time.
There's nothing going on in the off season, and RL Esports and Epic Games created an ecosystem where it's not worth it to own teams in the off season, which is why you've seen probably 7 orgs at this point already leave. If I were to take a guess, giving up makes more sense because you can't make a career out of Rocket League esports. It's so hard right now.
Hey guys, today's episode of Don't At Me is sponsored by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monitor and save into today's
league. Some of the most storied organizations in the game are thinking about leaving Rocket League, and some have already left. So where do we start talking about this whole thing? Let's quickly look back to 2016 when Rocket League was well positioned to harness this rising tide of venture capital.
I don't know which orgs stepped away. I heard something about G2, but is that real?
There were lots of upsides to the game for investors.
Surely not.
The basic formula of car soccer made instinctive sense to a wide audience. That same formula didn't involve realistic violence, suggestive content, or difficult themes like terrorism, and rosters were small at 3 players.
Oh, it's
the
saying
players and audience for the game also seemed to skew younger, making the fan demographic potentially even more interesting to advertisers than some competitors. But as VC money flocked to the game, we got the same result in Rocket League that we got everywhere else. Player salaries went up quickly. As explained by commentator and
So this is the situation where, like, this happens everywhere, where one player goes crazy and therefore nets a higher salary, and because they get a higher salary, other people, like, if they're getting paid like, you know, this much, I want to get paid this much, and then it does this, right? I've heard whispers about that where, like, you know, a team could start it, you're getting paid $1,000 a month, and then, you know, 3 years later, it's like, cool, now every single person on the team, you're all getting like 15K. It's so it's not sustainable. It's a crazy obviously you want you want all your players to be paid, and you would like players to be paid well, but it's just not sustainable, especially for Rocket League.
Content creator Lawler a few weeks ago, an initial bidding war between Cloud9 and the newly funded NRG for the Kings of Urban roster in late 2016 helped to kick off a salary arms race.
Yeah.
Ever since that moment, there is a certain entitlement or a certain justification that players think because their buddies are making that kind of money that they also need to make that money.
Yeah.
And that just kept stacking up. And then organizations come in and go, hey, these kids are asking for 12, 15 a month and they're the best and they've got the biggest notoriety. We're going to do it. They come in.
See, that's where I'm like, that's nuts. Where, yeah, it's great that players can earn that much, but orgs just being like, yeah, let's pay it. It's like, oh, man, it's hard. Obviously, it's hard.
They can't sustain it, and then they back out, and the market
old school RuneScape's gonna be a new esport.
And the ones suffering
is there
are
a
the ones that have
competitive
been
aspect to
trying
that game?
Support it for long term. The G2,
like a properly competitive.
The people who've been around for a really long time since the beginning, that have their hearts in the right place,
Really?
that are trying to do things the right way.
Now, to be clear, I think most people, including Lawler, want players to be paid as well as possible.
Yeah,
and he says as much in his
100%.
video. And it's also not realistic
not
or
sustainable.
expected for players to try to figure out what's sustainable and what isn't, because without them, there's no esport. In short, just like every other esport.
This is also another reason why I think having the age limit be 13 is bad, because 13-year-olds financially are not responsible and are not making that thought process. Like, that you need managers or principals in place, not only to be like, hey, you know, look after yourself, look after your money, like don't spend on useless stuff, but also to kind of realistically look back and be like, if you keep demanding this money, you're not going to be picked up. It's not doable. But then again, you need a parent or a manager that understands the scene on the inside, which isn't very common at all.
We can't expect players to turn down the bag, but we also need to acknowledge that these rising salary costs are part of the problem that's currently
100%.
facing Rocket League esports.
I don't think that necessarily
Jeff?
players and agents have always had the organization's best interests at heart when they, or not best
No,
interests, because obviously
100%.
they've got the players' best interests at heart.
Players
I don't
always
think they've necessarily
Focus
always
on
balanced what their value is correctly to what
themselves.
they offer to the organization.
Not even in
From
a
a player
selfish way,
perspective,
just
of
how
course,
it
someone's
is.
going to want the best salary. That's obvious. But I think also players have to think about what they're actually doing for.
You're
that
sorry
salary.
to keep pausing. You're also like, you're not as a player going into an org being like, oh, they've only got this much money, because you don't know that. So you're not going to be like, if they offer me 15K, you're not going to be like, I'll make it 10K because then it's sustainable. You're going to be like, oh, okay, if you're willing to spend that much, then yeah, of course.
Because just playing
And
Rocket
they-
League
And then it's like,
is not going to be enough.
cool.
Now fast
Can't
forward
afford
to
you anymore.
2024, where some orgs are saying that their ability to make those salaries back hasn't improved very much, and some are even saying that over the past year, it's gotten worse. It's a stark contrast from 2022, when the World Championship success stoked interest in the game,
What's up,
and the
Xavier? I'm
esports
good, man.
possible inclusion in Tier 1
How are you?
seemed imminent. So one part of this puzzle is the revenue
I'll put
sharing
chat on screen
on
just a
shop
bit.
items. Resolve COO Jeff Simpkins posted a thread back in August about the disparity in sales from shop items with revenue sharing, and it's grim. This is one of the primary ways orgs can make money through the game itself, by designing and then selling in-game branded esports items, where a portion of the revenue is shared with the org. Simpkins pointed to fewer items per team, reduced season length, and difficulties translating submitted designs faithfully to the game as factors that affect all teams.
The design that we submitted was not what ended up on the car. The colors were completely different.
How?
The design was wrong in certain places. Yeah, it just wasn't good. Our car in game, in the politest possible way, like it just doesn't.
How do you?
It's just not. That isn't what we created, and it doesn't do justice to Aspect, to who created it.
He also noted that
How do you
his own
change
team's
a company's
performance in
design?
Split 1 and the
Like that-
designs themselves were likely also
Surely you
part
just
of the
like
puzzle
veto it
in
and you're like,
their
no,
specific
that's not what we wanted.
case. I should also add that these esports items are not mandatory for pro players representing their teams in official games, which could potentially limit their appeal to fans. Team skins have long been a thing in the Activision Blizzard world, for example, and are forced on for teams competing in the Call of Duty League or formerly in the Overwatch League. Players may be hesitant to switch up their setup in Rocket League, which makes total sense, but I wonder if we couldn't just try to cosmetically change the things for the broadcast so that they can drive interest in these items. And
I mean,
the general
there's
value
definitely
and
a way to do it,
attractiveness of
surely.
Rocket League items was also impacted when, in late 2023,
Trading.
the ability to trade them was completely removed from the game. But it's also
I don't
way
think that
deeper than that.
really
Simpkins
factors in
posted
too
that
much with
nearly
that,
half
sure.
of his team's RLCS expenditure was on, you guessed it,
Salaries?
That brings us to the next
Damn.
point. Some orgs are starting to speak publicly about
Spending
the fact
half
that
your
making the
income
numbers
on
work
just
in
salary.
Tier 1 Rocket League is difficult, if not impossible.
Just to
The
lose like
last couple of
you'd lose.
seasons, decisions have been made that progressively have made it much harder for esports.
That's so
orgs,
like that's terrifying.
in Rocket League, in Rocket League esports.
You
and I think
win
it's
or
just
you
kind of coming to a head.
Names like TSM and OG seem to have a very uncertain future in the game, whereas BDS and G2 are struggling, but seem to want to continue to support Rocket League.
Surely they pull it back.
So who has already left? Well, just recently it's starting to look like more of a bloodbath. On October 2nd, OG announced that they would depart Rocket League.
OG?
This was
Okay.
NA's 4th ranked team heading into the World Championship. And sure, it's not like they
Is
won
OG
it all,
not
but
Octa
any
Gaming? Or is this a
functional
different
league needs
team
to
that
help teams
I
at
don't know
all
about?
ranks survive. A few days after that, Achilles XF
This one's
of
wild.
Shift reported that BDS, the team that won the World Championship this year, would not field a team to start the 2025 season, although they hope to be back soon. BDS responded less than a week later with confirmation that they had to review their position and investment in Rocket League Esports. The same day, Alex Gonzalez of Luminosity, Gaming, which left Rocket League Esports back in June, chimed in. He noted that the troubles now facing the scene required more than just revenue sharing tweaks, and were far more baked into the system. And it got even worse. G2's CEO confirmed that rumors about the org's potential non-participation were true, and that the support they get covers about 20% of the cost of running a tier 1 org. Now, they did say they would continue to search for a partner for the team. More on that in a moment. But let's be real, G2 are an institution in Rocket League. They've had a team since 2016, won numerous splits, and made second place at the World Championships a couple times too. They are the kind of team that Psyonix should desperately want to retain, and their departure from Rocket League would be a massive moment for the esports.
That's nuts.
And also likely an indictment of the way this whole thing is being handled. Another name that's cropped up is Team Solo Mid. While they didn't
always
outright
back and
say
forth?
that they were out,
Like TSM
they noted
in and
that
out
they
all the
can't
time?
commit
Yo,
until they
how's
have a
it
better
going?
understanding of the 20.
Bad. Staying with Team 1 for 9 months. How you been? This is bad. It's kind of scary. Like you know, G2 and BDS step back. Like that's two of the powerhouses of Rocket League just gone.
25 esports
So it's
and
like,
monetization structure.
why do you care?
Finally, back in September, Gen G's CEO noted that
truthfully,
while they
it doesn't
are
change
staying
me
in
at
Rocket
my
League,
life at
they
all.
are looking at all their
It's
options.
just wild
Then, after
looking into
G2's
it and going
statement,
like,
he commended them for their
what
openness
happened?
in speaking about the difficulties teams are facing,
missing
while
Rocket League?
reiterating that these
Nah, I
teams
just
are
saw it
still
pop up.
here because they believe so strongly in Rocket
I'll be
League.
honest about
There's
it.
one more take that I think is pretty interesting that I want to mention, but it's not from this year. Team Liquid actually left Rocket League at the end of 2023, but at that time, they posted an in-depth article explaining their viewpoint and how they view Rocket League esports as an overall structure. Let's be clear first, this isn't an angry org that's cruelly sniping at a scene that they've left behind. Their post says that they want to return, and if you actually read the whole thing and look at all the work they put into it, I really do believe them. They first concede that they might have stayed if they could have signed a stronger roster, but then argue that this dynamic is part of the problem. The esport, to their telling, is win or bust, and there isn't enough sponsorship revenue to let an org hang around and try to build something. On top of that, further changes to the competitive format this year, changes which Liquid obviously wasn't around to experience, may have also impacted org stability. So what can we do? What solutions are available to us if, as has already been mentioned, a slight tweak to revenue sharing will not be enough to reverse this thing?
Sorry, Rizzo. I wanted to quickly, because I was wondering as well, like, what do you do to change this, right? Like, in my head, any decals that are bought, it's like 100% profit should go to the teams, because, like, I have always said, a game lives and dies on its publicity, and it's very like publicity in the way of creators and the esports, right? Those are the two ways the game gets publicity. Without a creator pushing the game or an esport pushing the game, you don't really hear about a new game or a different game. If you let one side drop, the other side has to pull in pretty heavily. You're not willing to give an org 100% of its profit. You know, they're like, oh, cool. We've made this cool decal. We're getting whatever it is, 50% of the profit. It's like, why? Rocket League come out with different cars all the time. This one decal is going to be in the shop for a while. Just give all the profits on that one straight to the org. Just so that keeps them going. Like, they should be fighting with everything they can to keep orgs and to keep the esport flowing and keep it kind of progressing. Like, one thing you can do is all the pros can step up and say, hey, we don't need $15,000 a month. Actually, we need $5,000 a month, and we will just stream and, you know, post our gameplay and see how we go. You don't need $15,000. Great. It's great that you can get $15,000 from an org, but if that means that in 8 months' time, you're now dropped from that org, okay, you've made, you know, however much money you made, but let's say you took $5,000, you're now on a team for 3 years, you get more prize money, you get more chances to go up in the scene gets progressively bigger because more pros are working on it, and the skill ceiling is going higher and higher, and publicity is going higher, more sponsors are coming in, and then there's more money to be made. But if you're like, I want all this money right now, and then the scene dies off, you make no money past that point. You know, a little bit now becomes a lot later on if you're willing to just, you know, work your way up instead of kind of being like, well, everyone else is getting 15K, I'm getting 15K. It's like, okay, what if everyone goes to 5K? Game explodes, more people can get involved because more orgs get involved, because then more publicity, then more sponsors, then more money, everyone gets more. It's just, yeah, I don't know, man. That's one thing you can do. Everyone goes, let's dial it all back in.
Like, I do feel bad for the orgs. I feel bad for the orgs because it makes me feel bad for the like players. Because if the orgs don't want to be in, then the players just get f***ed. Because if the orgs don't want to be here, the players won't get paid. And then the players can't sustain this, and then the players can't play.
Well, they could try to expand the ways that orgs make money. Recall that back in 2019, Epic Games bought Psyonix. Fortnite uses creator codes. They were eventually added to Rocket League, but there's currently no option to use them to support orgs themselves. They could also try to provide more baseline support from the developer to all the orgs. After all, as we just mentioned, Epic Games owns Psyonix. Again, though, amounts here are key, and everything we've seen from orgs speaking out publicly about these things seems to suggest that, you know, ticking it up a couple of percentage points isn't going to instantly solve this problem.
Go to 100%.
All the orgs that I've spoken to, even if they've got a team this season, some organizations that I've spoken to have basically said they're either not coming back for this season or this might be their last season. So even some of the teams that have got some of the orgs that have got teams now are saying that this might be their last season. So I think it's obviously not in a good place for orgs, for sustainability, and definitely for profitability.
But BDS leave, they want LCS, they couldn't afford to
for teams, and
field
in turn it will get worse for players as well, because there's going to be a lot less orgs this coming season, I would suggest, and you know, players just aren't going to be able to make a living off Rocket League as it stands.
Unfortunately, it seems as though next season will restrict rather than expand the ways orgs can make money. Many teams have big sponsors who want their name on the team's esports decal, but according to reporting from Achilles, that won't be allowed in 2025. This will make attracting those sponsors.
Yo, wait, they're taking away the chance to put sponsors on cars. For what reason? Like, that doesn't even seem like anyone profits from that. It's not like, Epic Games is like, if we don't put their name on the car, then we'll get more money. It's just less advertising. In what world does anyone that wants to grow and progress as a sport or as a community or anything want less advertising, less eyes on, less opportunity, less sponsorships?
Even harder.
What's wrong with them?
Direct hit to orgs. And maybe there need to be some structural changes even beyond that. In his video, Lawler pointed out that the combination of player ownership of the slot plus constant roster churn makes it difficult for orgs to get invested.
It's like, you want to be invested in this, but they don't have the control to justify being invested. And because of that, rosters change at the flip of a hat. It's very tough for organizations to really invest long-term and build these narratives and these storylines when every 3 months it's changing. And then 6 months after, it's a completely different team. Like, how do I, as a fan, invest in a team and or an organization when the team and the organization is different every single split every single year?
Yeah.
Listen, the ownership of the slot gives players a lot of control over their
People will follow a player rather than
generally I'm in favor of that because they make the esport possible, and I honestly don't care about the exact ROI that some celebrity investor gets on a Rocket League team. But there's got to be some stability if you want to keep investors happy. Now let's talk about the league format itself, and honestly, it's not perfect either. In 2024, there's essentially over 3 months of off-season break at the end of the year. It's a lot. There are some smaller events planned before 2025, but some of these aren't events a pro team would attend, which means it's not necessarily improving how an investment in the esport looks for an org. They're probably still good for fans, and maybe for the ecosystem as a whole, but at the very least, orgs have much more limited opportunities during the break.
It's just so long. If you don't make majors and you don't make worlds, the off season is just ridiculously long. It's not even that it's just a 3-month off season. For some teams, it's horrifically long. You know, those players that were with us haven't been paid now, you know, because for organizations like ourselves, we aren't big enough to be able to support players all through that really long off season, especially with so few events.
Now, this past year was the first year of Blast running the RLCS, and it looks like there are even more changes to come next year. When they were announced in September, I think they were generally seen as positive by many people. These include a somewhat bigger prize pool for 2025 to the tune of $5 million, and also the addition of a 1v1 circuit, which, while it's likely to be fairly small, could still be pretty fun. And it expands the World Championship to 20 teams while making sure that the top 8 teams at majors don't have to constantly play open stages. That makes total sense to me. There could be more things unannounced.
I would be a pro for minimum wage at 22 Lamau.
Off-season will be handled, but again, while these are interesting and exciting for fans, it's not clear to me that any of these things are really changing the temperature for orgs looking to invest.
G2 are already saying that. Team Liquid already.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it probably doesn't change anything for orgs, actually. It's just cool that we get something new, but for an org, it's like, oh, okay. Genuinely, it's like, cool. So now I need to make sure one of my players is a good ones player, maybe?
Talking about it, you know, whether they come back next season or not. And, you know, I spoke to numerous orgs in private that are debating not coming back. So I don't know what the wake-up call is. Maybe we really have to hit rock bottom. You know, viewership has to tank. The big orgs have to pull out for them to finally go, oh, this is not good.
When recently contacted by Esports Insider about sustainability, Psyonix pointed to the announced changes and to potential future announcements. But it seems like some orgs, like
thing every time
potentially already
we have
seen
something
those
coming up.
changes,
It's like,
and it wasn't encouraging enough.
It's something coming
to
up
me,
for like
that's not surprising
years,
because
man.
it seems like there's still a conversation that needs to happen between the developers and the orgs about what exactly could change here to make this more attractive. Epic Games has the ingredients that Rocket League esports needs to succeed.
Yeah,
they've got a compelling game, passionate fans, and orgs that really believe in this competitive scene beyond just trying to get some quick payday. But they also have serious problems, most notably the inability of many orgs outside the top tier teams to make this into a functional business. And if that isn't resolved, it won't just be orgs that suffer, fans will too. Really, the question will be whether or not they can agree on how to make this thing work going forward. And if they can't, well, it won't be the first time that a massive company with tons of cash and reach failed to understand and execute on their own game's esport.
Thanks for watching.
Is he referencing Overwatch? Is that an Overwatch thing? It's just kind of sad. They could implement like the Formula 1 thing where you have a price limit and every team, no one can spend above a certain limit, which just limits how much a player can get paid, which is once again kind of rough. But at the same point, then the game is more about building perfect teams and building and working together as a team rather than which org has the most money to buy this player this year. I think that way you probably get the most. Introducing the Formula 1 rule, there's no salary cap in Formula 1. Sorry, not salary, but you know what I mean? Like they can't spend a certain amount on their cars. Like every team has the same amount of money to spend on their cars. You do the same for every team has the same amount of money to spend on their. I know there's no salary cap. I just mean the other thing. Monkey Moon, right? Crazy player. Say salary cap is like $7,000. Monkey Moon is getting $7,000. Zen is getting $7,000. Vatira's getting $7,000. So then again, at that point, it's not about like, oh, we'll pay you 15,000 to come here. And he's like, okay, easy. It's more like the players get to be like, I like this company. I like this brand. I want to work with this team and I want to work with these players. And then it's all about how does a team function. I don't know where we go. They either need to sponsor. Yeah, I'll go full game real quick. They either need to come in and heavily sponsor orgs to keep it running, or they have to introduce like a salary cap. Players have to go, hey, we don't need 15K, or they let it die and it gets swept away, and then maybe in a few years it comes back again and everyone starts over. No clue. We'll see how we go.